Cop lies to convict black woman, then her defense shocks the entire courtroom. The statement given by Officer Parker is a complete lie. Amara Carter's voice echoed through the courtroom, causing a deathly silence followed by incredulous murmurs. She remained standing, her gaze fixed on the judge, while the police officer sitting on the witness stand visibly stiffened, his face reddening. Judge Wilson frowned. "Ms. Carter, this is an extremely serious accusation against a respected officer with 15 years of service. I suggest you weigh your next words carefully." Amara, 34, a history teacher and community activist, never imagined she would be standing there, accused of assaulting a police officer and resisting arrest. Crimes that could land her in prison for up to 5 years and end her career. All because of a routine traffic stop that turned into a nightmare when Officer Parker claimed she had assaulted him when he approached her. "With all due respect, Your Honor, I stand by my statement. And I can prove that Officer Parker not only lied under oath, but fabricated evidence against me for reasons that go far beyond this incident." Amara's public defender, a nervous-looking recent law school graduate, discreetly tugged at her blazer sleeve, signaling for her to sit down. At the prosecution table, Prosecutor Jennifer Martinez smiled confidently. She had a solid case, the testimony of a decorated police officer against a black woman with a history of problems with authorities due to her peaceful protests for police reform. "Ms. Carter has chosen to represent herself at this time, Your Honor," explained the lawyer, clearly uncomfortable. "Against my explicit advice." The judge sighed. "Very well. Ms. Carter, I understand your frustration, but baseless accusations against a law enforcement officer only hurt your case. The jury will consider this behavior." Officer Parker, gray hair at the temples, military bearing, and an impeccable record according to the prosecution, adjusted his tie, looking directly at the jury with an expression of someone who had been wronged. "If I may, Your Honor," Amara continued, "I would like to question Officer Parker about the events of the night of March 17th. The judge hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "Proceed. But remain respectful." Amara slowly approached the witness stand. Her heart was racing, but her voice remained steady. This moment was the result of weeks of meticulous preparation, sleepless nights, and a determination born not only of the injustice done to her, but of the hundreds of similar cases she had witnessed in her community. "Officer Parker, you stated in your report that you approached me at 10:15 p.m. because of a broken taillight on my vehicle. Is that correct?" "Yes, that was the reason for the stop," Parker replied confidently. "And you stated that I abruptly exited the car, ignoring your orders to remain in the vehicle, and then assaulted you by pushing you when you attempted to restrain me. Is that correct?" "That is exactly what happened." His voice showed no hesitation. Amara nodded slowly. "Interesting." She walked over to her desk and picked up a small flash drive. "Your Honor, I would like to introduce a piece of evidence that was not included in the case file." Prosecutor Martinez stood up immediately. "Objection. Any evidence should have been shared during the discovery phase." The judge looked sternly at Amara. "Ms. Carter, this is extremely irregular. This evidence only came to my attention yesterday, Your Honor. It's security camera footage from the convenience store across the street from where I was detained." Officer Parker's face subtly drained of color. "I'll allow it, but be aware that it may be disregarded if deemed improper," the judge ruled after a moment. As the technician prepared the equipment for display, Amara felt the weight of the stares on her. Among the spectators, she recognized Malik Thompson, an investigative journalist she had worked with on community projects. His gaze conveyed a silent message of support. What no one in the room knew was that Malik had been instrumental in obtaining that evidence, and much more. What no one in that room could have imagined was that the video was just the tip of the iceberg. Behind Amara's calm demeanor lay not only the determination of a wrongfully accused woman, but the meticulous strategy of someone who had uncovered a disturbing pattern in Officer Parker's practices, a pattern that was about to be exposed in a way that would shake the very foundations of the entire police department. If this story of injustice and resistance touched your heart, be sure to subscribe to the channel to find out how a simple history teacher turned her greatest humiliation into an opportunity to expose decades of systemic abuse that no one had been able to prove until then. The lights in the courtroom flickered as the technician plugged in the flash drive. Officer Parker kept his expression confident, but his fingers drummed nervously on the edge of the witness stand. The video began, clearly showing the date and time, March 17th, 10:15 p.m. The camera perfectly captured the scene, Amara's car already parked, all lights on. Officer Parker simply pulled up behind her, no siren lights on. There was no traffic violation. The room watched in silence as Amara remained in her car, rolled down her window, and handed over her documents. No sign of the abrupt exit mentioned in the report. The dialogue couldn't be heard, but the growing tension was palpable. Then, without warning, Parker opened the door and pulled Amara out with disproportionate force, pushing her against the vehicle and handcuffing her. "Your Honor," Amara said when the video ended, "there were no broken lights, I did not leave the vehicle, and I certainly did not assault Officer Parker." The prosecutor stood up, visibly shaken. "This video has clearly been edited. The original recording is available for forensic analysis," Amara interrupted. "The store keeps backups for 90 days. Officer Parker's face had completely drained of color. Judge Wilson adjusted her glasses, her expression now stern as she turned to the police officer. "Officer Parker, would you like to reconsider your testimony?" Parker cleared his throat. "There must be a misunderstanding. My memory of the events." "Your memory?" Amara asked. "Or your systematic habit of falsifying reports against specific citizens?" "Objection!" exclaimed the prosecutor. "Unfounded allegations." "Your Honor, I request permission to present additional evidence regarding Officer Parker's history." It was at that moment that the young public defender rose. "Your Honor, I would like to resume representing Ms. Carter." Amara looked at him, surprised. "My name is Daniel Rivera," he continued, adjusting his tie. "And I believe I can be more helpful now." 3 weeks earlier, Amara had almost given up hope. Then a phone call from investigative journalist Malik Thompson changed everything. "Amara? I need to see you right away. Don't talk about it on the phone." 2 hours later, in a noisy coffee shop, Malik slipped her an envelope. "Parker has a history. 17 formal complaints in 5 years, all mysteriously dismissed. 15 of the complaints came from black women between the ages of 25 and 40. Professionals who dared to question his authority." "How did you get this?" Amara asked, leafing through the documents. "I have a source in the Internal Affairs Department. Someone as tired of this behavior as we are." Over the next few weeks, they worked tirelessly, building not only her defense, but a case to expose a disturbing pattern. Every night after her classes, Amara met with Malik at different locations, always changing to avoid suspicion. One evening, Daniel Rivera, the public defender assigned to her case, showed up at her door. "Miss Carter, I understand you haven't been responding to my messages." Malik and Amara exchanged apprehensive glances as they invited him in. "I want you to know that I'm really here to help you," he said, glancing at the scattered documents. "My sister went through something similar with the department." No one believed her. "She lost her job, her reputation. I became a lawyer to fix things like that." That night, Daniel became part of the team. As a public defender, he had access to information that neither Amara nor Malik could legally obtain. His young, harmless appearance meant that no one saw him as a threat. Back in court, Daniel took on his true role in the plan. As he presented the additional evidence, Amara watched Officer Parker's face pale as official documents began to be projected. 17 complaints. 15 black women. 7 cases with missing evidence. And then the final blow, a clear pattern of nearly identical language in each falsified report, analyzed by a forensic linguist. The shock on the jury's faces was evident. The prosecution looked stunned. What Parker didn't know was that Amara wasn't just any teacher. She was an expert in documenting historical patterns of institutional oppression. Her doctoral thesis had been on how power systems use standardized language to justify unjust actions. In the gallery, Captain Reynolds of the police department watched with growing discomfort. When the name of Parker's supervisor, Sergeant Williams, appeared on the screen, he discreetly got up and left the room, phone in hand before he even reached the hallway. Only Malik noticed his departure, exchanging a meaningful glance with Amara. It was exactly as they had planned, the first step in a chain reaction much larger than Parker could have imagined. What no one in that courtroom understood yet was that this seemingly isolated case was only the first carefully placed domino in a chain that, when knocked over, would expose decades of systematic corruption that reached far beyond the streets to the very heart of power in the city. Daniel strode confidently across the courtroom, presenting each piece of evidence with the precision of someone who had meticulously planned this moment. The pattern is unmistakable, Your Honor. 17 approaches, 15 black professional women, 7 cases with lost evidence. Parker pulled at his tie, which seemed to be suffocating him. His gaze found Captain Reynolds in the gallery, a silent plea for help that was answered with an almost imperceptible nod toward his cell phone. And most intriguing, Daniel continued, turning to the jury, is what we found when we linguistically analyzed Officer Parker's reports. A new projection appeared on the screen, a detailed analysis comparing specific phrases used in the reports against all the women. Demonstrated aggressive behavior when questioned. Refused to follow simple instructions. Represented a potential threat. These phrases appear in every report, word for word. Prosecutor Martinez rose quickly. Your Honor, objection. This is an attempt to smear a respected officer based on linguistic coincidences. Coincidences? Amara asked softly, approaching the prosecution table. Or evidence of a prefabricated model used to justify discriminatory approaches. The judge hesitated, clearly disturbed by the evidence. Ms. Martinez, I will allow you to continue. This is relevant to establishing the credibility of the witness. Parker's face had completely drained of color. His eyes darted nervously between the jury, the judge, and the door, calculating his options. It was at this moment that the courtroom doors swung open. A man in a dark suit hurried in, making his way to the defense table and handing Daniel an envelope. The young lawyer smiled as he examined its contents. Your Honor, I would like to present a final piece of evidence that has just been released by the Department of Internal Affairs. Prosecutor Martinez's eyes widened. That's completely irregular. We didn't have prior access to. Because the Internal Affairs Department only released this evidence 20 minutes ago, Daniel interrupted. After an emergency court order was obtained this morning. Parker stood up abruptly. I refuse to continue. This is a judicial ambush. Sit down, Officer Parker, the judge ordered sternly. Or you will be held in contempt of court. Daniel plugged a new flash drive into the system. What you are about to see is a recording from Officer Parker's body camera from the night of March 17th, a recording that was marked corrupted in the department's files. Parker turned pale. That's impossible. Those recordings were. He stopped mid-sentence, realizing too late what he was about to admit. The entire room watched in shocked silence as the video showed not only the interaction with Amara, confirming her version, but also a subsequent conversation between Officer Parker and Sergeant Williams. The usual activist, questioning my authority. You know the procedure. Mark her as aggressive, resisting arrest. She's been protesting against the department for months. It's time to teach her a lesson. A murmur ran through the room. Prosecutor Martinez closed her briefcase, her face a mask of disappointment and anger, not directed at Amara, but at the officer who had misled her. Your Honor, she said, rising, the prosecution is dropping all charges against Ms. Carter and requesting a full investigation of Officer Parker for perjury, falsification of evidence, and systematic discrimination. The judge nodded grimly. Granted. Officer Parker, you are under arrest until further order for contempt of court and possible perjury. The jury is dismissed. As the bailiffs approached, Parker finally lost his composure. You don't understand. She and people like her are undermining our authority. Williams approved all of this. The captain knew. He was silenced as he was escorted out, his desperate words echoing even deeper revelations. Amara remained calm, even as reporters flooded the room. Daniel smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. We did it. No, she replied softly. We've only just begun. Outside the courthouse, Malik waited with a discreet smile, holding a flash drive identical to the one presented earlier. Amara nodded in recognition, knowing that this small device contained much more, recordings, emails, and messages detailing how the system protected problematic officers, ignored complaints from minorities, and maintained a culture of impunity. Amara's case was not the end, but the catalyst. In the makeshift press room on the steps of the courthouse, she did not talk about her personal victory, but about the 14 other women who had been silenced by the same officer. And as the cameras broadcast live, she announced the creation of a coalition to hold accountable not only abusive police officers, but the system that protected them. What no one could have predicted was that the collapse of Officer Parker's career was only the first domino in an institutional domino effect. In the weeks that followed, as the evidence gathered by Amara, Malik, and Daniel began to circulate, names far more powerful than Parker would discover that no badge, title, or political connection could protect them from the truth meticulously documented by a history teacher who knew exactly how empires of injustice eventually fall, not through great battles, but through small cracks that, when exposed to the light, can no longer be ignored. 6 months after the trial that exposed Officer Parker's corruption, the small community room was packed. Dozens of attentive faces watched Amara Carter, now a nationally recognized figure, as she led a workshop on civil rights and documenting police abuse. "We don't have to wait for the system to protect us," she explained, her voice carrying a quiet conviction that exuded authority. "We can learn to protect each other through systematic documentation and collective action." At the back of the room, Daniel Rivera, no longer the nervous public defender, but now the respected legal director of the Coalition for Police Accountability, smiled proudly. At his side, Malik Thompson took notes for his award-winning series of investigative reports that continued to expose similar cases across the country. Amara's case had set off exactly the domino effect they had planned. The initial investigation into Officer Parker quickly escalated into a full audit of the department, revealing a systematic pattern of abuse against black women. Sergeant Williams was suspended and faced criminal charges. Captain Reynolds, after initially trying to cover up the case, eventually resigned in disgrace when his text messages instructing officers to deal with the troublemakers were exposed. As for Officer Parker, his fall was spectacular. Convicted of perjury and evidence tampering, he lost not only his badge but also his pension. His desperate attempt to blame his superiors only deepened his disgrace. He now worked as a night security guard at a small mall on the outskirts of town, the only position he could find with his record. "I'm still following the cases of the other 14 women," Amara told the participants. 12 of them have had their convictions overturned. For 2, unfortunately, the damage was already done. One lost permanent custody of her children, another lost a promising medical career. But we are fighting for fair compensation. In the front row, Judge Wilson listened intently. After Amara's trial, she had become an unexpected ally, implementing new transparency rules in her court and pushing for reforms within the judicial system. "Power never gives up willingly," Amara continued. "But when confronted with irrefutable evidence and public mobilization, it is forced to retreat." After the workshop, as participants gathered to chat, Prosecutor Martinez approached Amara discreetly. "I have to admit, you taught me a valuable lesson," she confessed. "I used to blindly believe police reports. Now my office has implemented a double-check protocol for all charges based solely on police testimony. We've already dismissed 17 cases in the last 3 months." Amara smiled. "It's not about distrusting all police officers, but about ensuring that power comes with accountability." On the walk home, Amara reflected on how her life had changed. The history teacher who had once struggled to keep her small apartment now ran a community legal defense center, funded by a civil rights foundation impressed by her case. Her history curriculum now included a module on documenting institutional abuse, using her own case as a study. In her apartment, tucked away in a drawer, she still kept the police report Parker had falsified. It was a reminder of how a single lie, challenged with courage and strategy, could expose an entire system of oppression. What few knew was that the methodology developed by Amara, Malik, and Daniel had been adapted and was being implemented in communities across the country. The Carter strategy, as some called it, was based on 3 principles: meticulous documentation, analysis of linguistic patterns in official reports, and building coalitions among isolated victims. "True justice," Amara often said in her lectures, "is not just winning a case, but transforming the system that allowed the abuse to happen." The following week, when the last of the women wrongfully convicted by Parker was released, a small celebration brought together everyone involved. Amid hugs and tears of relief, Daniel raised a toast to Amara, who reminded us that the most powerful weapon against injustice is not anger, but strategic intelligence combined with unwavering courage. In her impromptu speech, Amara looked at the women who had suffered the same abuse, now united as a family. "What Parker and those like him will never understand is that by trying to silence us individually, they ended up creating a collective voice too powerful to ignore. Every attempt to push us into the shadows only brought us further into the light." The changes continued to spread. 3 police departments in neighboring cities implemented preventive reforms. A state law requiring always-on body cameras during stops was named after Parker's first identified victim. And on college campuses, law students now studied Amara's case as an example of how to challenge systemic abuse. If this story about how one person with determination, strategic allies, and well-documented evidence can take on a corrupt system has touched your heart, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories that remind us that justice may seem slow, but when it arrives grounded in truth, its impact transcends the individual case and plants seeds of transformation for future generations.